Morning, can you hear me okay? Hey, good morning. All right, so I'm gonna just really quickly do this. I think that I can mute. I'm gonna mute everybody, sorry, just so that we can make sure that we don't have any background noise as we're going. Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. If I haven't had a chance to meet you before, welcome to our case study review. So every other week, we've made a point to review the case of one of our recent graduates, not only to just kind of showcase what's possible, but also to really inspire hope and opportunity for children with dyslexia, because I think a lot of people just really have the wrong idea about what could happen for these children, and so we're really excited when we can share these cases. So today we're going to talk about Finley, who was 8 as she was in our program. She just turned 9 last week. And she went from being 50% accurate in phonological awareness to 93% accurate as a result of being in the program. And so for those of you that don't know a lot about dyslexia yet, phonological awareness is the brain's ability to really hear and respond to language in an accurate way. And so as she started, this was a significant hindrance to her, and she went in a couple of months' time to being nearly perfect with that skill. We tested her on the wide range achievement test in reading and spelling before and after, and so she jumped from the 4th percentile to the 19th in reading, the 5th percentile to the 19th in spelling, which, in real time looked like her going from reading books at a pre-K level to reading texts at 4th grade. So I'll kind of walk you through all of this data and kind of help you to understand a little bit more about this. But for those of you that don't know much about us or what we do, we help families to take cutting edge neuroscience and bring it right into their living room. So everything that I'm about to share with you is something that Finley's mom did with her at home in 10 to 15 minutes a day. So it's possible that they might have been in their living room. It's possible that mom might have been in her pajamas the entire time that she was doing this work to help to really reorganize the way that her daughter's brain functioned for language. And so part of what we do is we bring advanced dyslexia interventions into your home, making it accessible and practical for your family. And so this is something that we coach you through. We don't just give it to you and say, good luck with that. We kind of hold your hand throughout this entire process. So as we start today, I want to just begin by giving you a deeper understanding of what dyslexia really is, because I can appreciate that some of you might be brand new on this journey. And so for those of you that are on the call today, feel free to just throw it in the chat. If you have a particular child that you are concerned about, how old are they? What's kind of making you tune into this? And then I can certainly speak to some of the things that you might be dealing with. But in general, it's important that you know that dyslexia is a condition that's neurobiological in origin. And what's really important to see about this is that the profile neurologically of a child with dyslexia is physically different. So you can see in the person without dyslexia that there is this activity in the back part of the brain where vision is controlled. We call this our occipital lobe. And there's also significant activity here in what we call the parietal temporal lobes of the brain, where some of the auditory information is really taken in. And so it's this symbiotic relationship between sight and sound when you read. And so as you take a look at this person with dyslexia, you notice that the biological profile is physically different. And so you'll see that there is no activity back in the occipital lobe and far, far less activity in the parietal temporal, which is why a child with dyslexia might add in letters, or they might write letters backwards, or they might omit letters, or try really, really hard to decode a word. And then 2 lines later, they see the same word and it's like they've never seen it before. It's this misfire in their brain's language centers that causes all of that to happen. And so here's another view, this time via EEG, of the same thing. So again, typical reader is going to have a lot of activity here in this auditory component, and then as well in the back, as opposed to the reader with dyslexia who doesn't have that activity. But what's so, so important for you to know and understand is that you absolutely can create activity in an area that didn't have activity before. So after you do remediation between sight and sound and you use the power of neuroplasticity and repetition, you absolutely can create neurological activity. And so in this case, we can kind of see what that did for Kenzie and her daughter Finley. So I want to just kind of share with you their story, because I think, those opportunities really give you a chance to see what it looks like for other people. So for Kenzie, they found out at the end of her first grade year that she was dyslexic. So she had gone all the way through first grade. They had learned that it was a little bit challenging. It wasn't making a lot of progress. And so with 2 weeks left of the school year, they brought her and her husband into what's called an ARD meeting. So they live in Texas, they have those there. And they said, your daughter has dyslexia. So don't worry, we've got a plan for you. She's going to go through her summer normally. We're going to put her in special education next year. We've got a special program that we're going to do with her. We're going to put her in these other classes. We're going to pull her out of typical reading and math with her peers. Everything's going to be fine. And so her and her husband left that meeting just super overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, I don't even know about dyslexia. Now we found out that our daughter has it, but they had this feeling of peace about it because the school had given them a plan. Like, this is what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to approach it. And everything is going to progress from there. And so what was tricky, and she had shared this, she said, we had really high hopes that we were going to fix it. But at every meeting in their second grade year, they kept saying, she's making progress. That's all we can ever ask from her. She's never going to. And so the amount of times that they kept saying, like, she's never going to do this and she's never going to do that, it was almost like to mom that they were lowering the expectations of what could or should be for Finley. And so at the end of second grade year, so they had gone through this intervention for the entire year. She was still really far behind, but they said, that's okay. She's still making progress. Her and her husband kind of came to this crossroads where they had to decide what to do. So she said, we looked at her little journal that she was keeping for school and we couldn't read anything. We brought this to the ARD meeting and said, we're super concerned about this. School wasn't super concerned. They said, what do you expect? She's got dyslexia. So that was a really hard moment. And I bring that up because I think a lot of you are probably in that place too, where you are having to make some really difficult decisions. You've got the school who is likely a trusted partner to you, and they're telling you, like, we're going to do our best to fix it. And sometimes what you find is that the methodology or the amount of kids that are in the small group make it impossible for your child to get that individualized, specialized help that they really need. And so, for Kenzie, she was in the middle of the night and she said, I was doom scrolling and I saw an example of what a child's writing looked like at the beginning of the program versus the end. And I listened to 2 mom celebration stories. And then I realized, like, oh my gosh, there's hope. This doesn't have to be her future. So I say that only because for so many of you, you probably have had some really sleepless nights. where you are worried sick about your child's future and what they can accomplish and all of those things. And it's really, really hard to hear other people reduce or lower the expectations of what is possible for your kid. She said it was absolutely gut-wrenching. She left the last ARD meeting. She said, I just sat in the parking lot and I cried. She was behind in everything. She wasn't making progress toward what I knew she could do. And so she said, it's hard to hear that there's something wrong with your child, but we were excited to find us, to know that things could be better. We knew that there was a better way. We just needed a glimmer of hope. And then we decided to put in the work and just do it. So the question that they came back to is, what if we decide to do it and it changes her whole life? What if we can massively shift the way that her brain is functioning? What if we can give her a different or a better opportunity? So I think the mindset and the identity of this mama is like, I'm not going to settle. I know that the school maybe doesn't believe that this is going to get that much better, or they're okay with having it be at this level, but I want her to have a career. I'm tired of the stigma. I don't want to put her in a box. I don't want these expectations to be way less. So they opted at the end of second grade year to just homeschool. And they did our program as the only English language arts that they did. Now, you certainly don't have to do that. I'm just kind of sharing what this particular family did in their journey. But it was really powerful for her. So she said, you know, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it. The one-on-one was where it was at for her. She was excited to see the triumph. You know, and times where things got hard, because sometimes they do. She was celebrating the fact that she had a team and a coach of people that were saying, like, keep going, you've got this. So we do have Twice Weekly support where families can come in and ask questions about the work that they're doing. Coach me on this. What do you think about that? And so, you know, she said that one-on-one that she was doing with her daughter, in addition to the coaching and support, was really exciting. And then things would click, and she said it was like, woo. It was fulfilling. We tried tutoring places and it never did anything. I can't imagine anything else working. This program, as an educated person, I understand why it works. You were all very good about saying, this is what we're doing, this is why it works. And so now she's decided, like, we want to keep going, and we want to continue giving support. So anyhow, I want to take you into Finley's data. So now that you know the background of Finley, this was her case, this is what she was dealing with. Hopefully that can help you to resonate with maybe some of the things that you also might be experiencing. So let's take a look at her data snapshot. So phonological awareness, I think I mentioned at the beginning, she started with 50% accuracy. So that, again, if we go back to those neurological images, that's her brain's ability to fire when she hears a sound. And can she attach it to a symbol? Can she remove that? Can she put it back together? You know, like that mental Olympics was really, really hard for her, and she was only able to get that accurate 50% of the time. A couple of months later, she had shifted to being accurate 93% of the time. And we'll go over this and why this matters in just a second, but the reading went from the 4th percentile to the 19th, which is a statistically significant difference. That's over double what a typical kid would make in a school year. And she did that in spelling as well. So, you know, just some celebrations after she, you know, had kind of completed the program. I had asked her mother, and you're welcome to watch her video as well. The mom, Kenzie's interview, is on YouTube. So if you want to see directly from her what she said, you're welcome to do that as well. But she said, I'm really glad that I got to be with her through this journey. I'm thrilled to see where she's at now. One of the biggest things that she shifted from doing, like when we go to Target, is she would previously go to look at toys. Of course, she's a little kid, but she's now going to Target to look for books. And so that's now a part of her culture. That's a part of what she loves to do. She said, oh my gosh, I have so many pictures on my phone of her reading in random different places because she was a proud mom. Like here she was a few months before being told your daughter is probably never going to read to like seeing her read all over their house. And so she said, I would text them to my family and my friends and everybody because she was really proud of the progress. She continues to tell Finley that once you learn how to read, you'll be a lifelong learner. And I wanted her to have that independence. And now she has that. From before looking in her journal, not being able to read anything, to notes all over my house that are written and spelled correctly with capitals and punctuations. She said she's spelling perfectly phonetically. So, she's still got some additional patterns that she can learn, but she went from not even being able to hear the sounds in words, not even including any vowels, to perfection in reading. And now she's spelling phonetically. Reading is going amazingly well. She's reading 4th grade level passages. She's reading fluently. She can answer comprehension questions about it. She's reading Junie B. Jones on her own. She reads. And so if you listen to her testimonial video as well, she does share that was a turning point moment for her. In her public school class in 2nd grade, they had all taken a trip to the library where they were asked to check out books. And because Finley was struggling to read, she was told, like, you can only check out these books. And to Finley, those were baby books. And all of her friends were reading Junie B. Jones. And so it was a huge, huge celebration for her to, in just a few months, be at the place where she too can read Junie B. Jones on her own, because in her mind, that equals I'm doing the same thing now that all of my peers were doing. So again, taking a look at the errors, she had 21 errors on this AATR. Can my brain actually hear and respond to language? When she got done, she only had 3. So massive, massive changes in just a couple of months, as opposed to, before when she wasn't making any changes at all. And so let's dive into educational statistics. Maybe this isn't everybody's like most fun thing to talk about, but I want to teach you about why this data is so significant and why it matters. So in the middle of the screen, you can see that there's this red mark here where the 50th percentile would be. So this is the normal distribution curve, and you can see that this is what would be typical. And then there are these lines right here and here and here and here and here and here. And so those are called standard deviations, above the mean and below the mean. And so anytime that we move like from the red to the blue, this is a 0.3 of a standard deviation, and that's about how much growth a typical child would have in a school year. So when we think about somebody that's in the 3rd grade, by the time they finish 3rd grade, they should have moved statistically this much just as a result of being in the classroom and learning. So if you go from the red to the green, that's considered moderate statistical significance, meaning that you moved a significant amount before above that. And then this orange here, which is a little bit tricky to see, is statistically significant results. So this is a 0.8 or higher, meaning the child has moved almost a full standard deviation of growth. So when we think about that in terms of education and statistics, any time that you are able to massively move a child like that, you can say that that intervention produced a statistically significant result. So let's take a look at Finley's and what that looked like for her. So when she started the reading, she was here at the 4th percentile. So she was performing, nearly 2 standard deviations below the mean. So what would have been typical growth for an entire school year is to go from the red to the yellow. And so that's likely what happened for her while she was in 2nd grade and receiving that intervention at the public school. She made some progress, but it wasn't enough to really be moving the needle or to really change anything significantly about what was happening. And so this kind of tan color here is statistically significant growth. We've gone that 0.8 of a standard deviation, which means that we know that there was a very high positive correlation between what she was doing and her results a couple of months later. The green is where Finley ended the course. And so within a couple of months, she jumped an entire standard deviation and nearly a half above where she was performing just a few months before. And so why is that important? I'm sure that many of you have heard of the term closing the gap, but anytime that there is a gap between your child's performance and their peers, it's really, really important that whatever you're doing is moving the needle, and it's moving the needle quickly, because when it doesn't, what it costs you is time. And why is that significant? If it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years plus in order to get any kind of statistically significant growth, what it costs the child is their self-confidence. It costs them feeling like I'm a good reader or that I belong in this classroom. So a lot of the self-awareness, self-concept, self-esteem really, really declines the longer that time interval goes on. And I think it's also important to acknowledge how the time can impact the adults in this child's life too. So if you poll anybody in our community of families, they will tell you absolutely dyslexia has affected me as a parent too, because that means frustration, that means tears, that means meltdowns. That's a whole bunch of extra that just gets put onto the family because this is happening. So it is really critically important that whenever you are doing something, you need that needle to move massively, and you need it to move quickly. So again, this is a huge celebration that she made massive movement. She is technically in the average range now, and she did that within a few months as opposed to a few years. And the same thing was true for spelling. So it actually looks almost identical. She started at the 5th percentile. Again, this would be typical growth in a school year to go from red to yellow. Statistically significant is to this tan. And then she went another half a standard deviation beyond that. So again, she's in this low average range here. A few more months, and it's highly possible that she could be at grade level or above. And so in those cases, like her mom's like, how do we keep working with you and make that happen? So, they're looking at that for additional support. But it's important to know that within a few months, this is possible. You can absolutely reorganize how the brain is hearing and responding to language. And when you do, you can expect to see some massive, massive shifts. And so, one of the things that I really want to celebrate always are the parents who show up to say, nope, this is not going to be the way that it goes for my child, because at some point in this journey, you have to make the decision that I'm not okay with the trajectory. She was truly an advocate. Had she gone to that ARD meeting at the end of 2nd grade and said, well, we're trying, this is just the way that it is for dyslexia, Finley would not be where she is right now. Finley would not be going to Target, checking out books. Finley would not be reading Junie B. Jones. Finley would not have little notes all over her house. She is in that place now because her mother and her father showed up to say, we want something else for her. They knew their daughter was bright. They knew she deserved better. They were willing to fight for her, so that she could have those same opportunities. And in her case, she even opted to homeschool just to ensure that she had the one-on-one time that she needed to truly get her needs met. Of course, that's not necessarily an option or needed for everybody, but just what it looked like in this case. So she was just super, super excited, grateful, all of the things that I think come from knowing that the child that you knew was bright and could be successful all along finally steps into their greatness. So I think this is just important to know. Again, when we talk about statistical significance and why it's important to look at something that is going to truly get to the heart of what's going on for dyslexia. The heart of dyslexia is that the brain has got inactive regions that do not function well for language. And so what's absolutely necessary is coming back to the root cause and reorganizing how the brain is actually hearing and responding to language so that it's accurate all of the time. That is going to massively shift reading, that massively shifts spelling. And we see this time and time again from graduates where they had been sitting and spinning for a period of time. Sometimes that's months, sometimes it's years that they had been trying everything under the sun to change what that looked like. And then, within months, they were able to really massively change that. And we see that time and time again. So if you're interested a little bit more in educational statistics, not everybody is. You can look at this citation down here. So John Hattie is a researcher that's done many, many studies. So meta-analyses of studies of effects on learning. And so some of the highest effects that he's seen in effective interventions are like a 1.3, a 1.29, a 1.5. And so we've statistically significantly outnumbered those top statistics every time with graduates. And so that's just something that we're super proud of, that when you do the right things, gosh, you can have it be one of the most influential things that you could do. So again, why is it critical to close the gap? It's going to allow the child to improve their academic performance. It allows them to increase their self-esteem and confidence. It allows them better mental health, greater access to opportunities, whether that's different coursework or different peer groups or different opportunities as it pertains to social people, groups, and learning in general. But when we look at the bigger picture, it reduces economic inequalities. Here's someone that's brilliant, and they now have access to different resources that they may have not otherwise if they didn't know how to read. And so I think it builds stronger communities, it can reduce crime, it increases innovation and progress, because whether you knew this or not, dyslexia is a superpower. People with dyslexia have neurological gifts that others do not, whether that's creativity or spatial thinking or lateral thinking. They have an incredible brain that deserves to be celebrated. And so if we can get this reading and spelling bit to come alongside of it, it's really incredible to think about the opportunity for these kids. So we encourage you to think about, what are your beliefs right now for your child with dyslexia? Have they been jaded through some of the feedback that you may have gotten from, friends or family or others? And, do you feel like that's right? Is it time for you to shift your beliefs in what's possible for this child so that you can lean into their potential, so that you can take action, so that they can get different results for their life? So if you are curious about okay, well, this is all great, Dr. Troy, but what do I do with this? Some of you may still be in that place where you don't know if dyslexia is really what you're dealing with. So if that's you, we do have a screener that you can take at home within about 20 minutes that will let you know for sure if that's what you're dealing with. And so it'll give you access to speak with a member of our team to really get clear on whether or not that is what you've got going on. I think that can be incredibly helpful. If you need access to that, let us know, and we're happy to get you the links that you need to figure that out. If you are sitting here saying oh my goodness, I know that what we're doing is not working, it has made little, if any, progress this entire time, and we are ready to massively shift how this is going, you are invited to book a call with our team. So these are completely complimentary. What the goal is to dig in to see whether or not you would be a candidate. So we obviously would let you know if we couldn't help you, but if we could, we would walk you through the steps of what that would look like to get support. So we would invite you to do that as well if that's something that you're ready to do. So with that, that concludes our case study. We're going to be doing another one in 2 weeks where we're going to review another recent graduate, Caleb's data.